Hey there, I'm Tracy Spears, speaker, author, coach, and co-founder of Exceptional Leaders Lab and host of Shift Out Loud. I am so excited to introduce you to somebody that probably has no idea how influential she has been to me over the years.
Oh,
From what I
nice.
learned in a book that
Thank
you
you.
wrote, watching you speak on some really big stages. My guest today is Sara Larch. I'm going to give you a little bit of her bio, though I should spend the entire time telling you about her in her bio, but I'm going to let her do
No,
that.
no.
But I have to say a couple of quick things. Sara brings 35 years of consulting and real world industry experience in large physician groups in integrated delivery systems, academic medical centers, has 8 years at Deloitte. I love that you were at Deloitte, and we're gonna talk a little bit about that,
Okay.
as managing director and national leader of the Physician Enterprise Practice. Now, there are so many things on this resume. C-suite experience was the COO of the University of Maryland's 900 physician organization, a vice president at, is it Inova Health
Mhm.
System? Said
It
that right?
is.
All right. Fantastic. Well known in the industry as a leader with the ability to bring large groups of people together around a common goal. I know that about you. I love that about you. Some key roles: vice president of Inova, as I mentioned, chief operating officer of Maryland, mentioned that. And listen, you have so many things that you have accomplished in your career. I'm going to invite you to come on in here now and help me out. You have you have definitely, influenced me in a way you don't even know, but I'm gonna bring you in. Sara Larch, come on in. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you
Hi.
so much for inviting me to join you. I'm excited.
Listen, this is so great. This is so great that I get to, have people that when the podcast is Shift Out Loud, that actually created shifts for me. And
Oh,
so you don't even
nice.
know that, but
I don't.
I'm going to tell you a quick story. So a couple of
Okay.
quick, though I'm supposed to get right to my guest as soon as possible. I'm going to keep talking for a minute.
Okay.
Okay, so here's my story though. Like you wrote that book, and it was the physician billing book, and I was in the industry, a little billing at the time, and I would go and watch you speak at all of these conferences. You have no idea that I sat in. I mean, like in every single conference you spoke in that I could be in, and I was just, took so many notes. However, that definitely helped me in my career. But watching you navigate an audience was amazing, and I learned so much
Oh,
from you in there. So there you go.
thank you. Well, I am I appreciate that comment. I did not realize you were there so many times. And if I did anything to influence you, all I can say is I feel proud because you are amazing.
Thank you.
And when you're in front of in front of an audience on the stage, I bow to you now. So, I think we're just taking turns giving to each other. How's that?
You know what? I think that's what it's supposed to be like. I think that's what shifting out loud is, right? It's as I get better and I inspire you to be better, you definitely inspire me to be better. I think, people have always asked, what's the out loud part? And it's, when you make a shift and in that shift, your life got better, your world got a little bit bigger. What does
Yep.
playing bigger, by the way, mean to you when you hear that term playing bigger?
Well, it's interesting, when I first heard it, when I looked at your podcast, and by the way, I've watched listened, pardon me, to several of them, and I really enjoyed them, and I'm learning from those too. Um, but I think playing bigger for me, I started thinking like, what does that mean for me, my career, my life, or whatever? And it immediately I started thinking, well, I feel like I've played bigger nationally in healthcare. I feel like I have a large network of folks, and I feel like I've contributed. And what's interesting to me now, though, because I'm retired, it's like I'm thinking about it differently. I'm thinking almost like I don't know if it's playing bigger anymore for me. I think it's having a bigger impact.
Mm.
So I think I'm more focused locally, geographically at this point. I really want to contribute to a community. And so that just it feels different. It still feels like playing bigger, but it feels like a different bigger. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense, and I think that's what playing bigger is too. I would define it as that, having a bigger influence, creating, more connection, and you're really, really good at that. I have watched you stand on
Thank you.
very big stages and get standing ovations and
Oh,
watched people that, again, I'm one of many, Sarah, that have benefited from your experience and the education that you provided all of us. But I do think
Thank you.
that when I watched all your shifts happening, you were definitely playing bigger each time. I was like, okay. First time it was, I don't know, 40 people in a room. Then it was like 5,000 people in a room. And that was a big deal. You received the Harry Harwick Lifetime Achievement Award from the Medical Group Management Association. And I'm so see, I was there. You probably don't even know that I was there in that room as well. I think they call those stalkers now, but anyway,
No, no, no. Well,
yeah,
and I won't replay what I said, but that moment of receiving that award is when I, played bigger and took maybe a risk. Maybe it wasn't a shift, but maybe it was a risk because, um, let's just say I talked off script and said some things that were important to me that I wanted to say to this audience at this moment. And I did get a few comments from people that, um, as you can imagine, because my husband and I are very active politically, that some people maybe not everybody agrees with everybody, which we understand. But even then, this really small comment it ended up being important to me because it did make a difference to some folks, whether they agreed or they didn't agree. So that's an interesting time to go back and think about.
interesting. My audience is like, what did she say?
I know, but we're not gonna talk about it.
Okay.
Well
Darn.
well, actually, here's what I'm gonna say.
Okay.
I'm gonna say that, I'm very because this is relevant to today. I'm very passionate about women's rights and choice and health equity. And so it wasn't exactly those words, but everybody could figure out that's what I was talking about. And I'm proud that I brought it up. I mean, one of my shifts was in that organization. Before I got that award, a little earlier in my career, I became board chair of that national organization and very proud of that, but also proud of the fact that I was the second woman to become board chair in 75 years.
Wow.
This is 2000. Think about how many decades before that that should have happened, right? Um, and and at that moment, is when you talk about me speaking to audiences and things, I took very seriously the responsibility of being a woman speaker and being a woman leader in that organization, and tried to help everyone that would want to follow and do something similar. I co-founded with three other women a women leaders forum within that organization with the single purpose of we just wanted it not to be another 75 years.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Well, listen, so I remember being on a bus somewhere. I don't know why you and I were ever on a bus together. We were probably going to some venue, some kind of,
Social function. Exactly.
and I remember it was when I first got on your radar because you're like, "See, here, have a seat." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, fantastic." And I sat down with you because, I wanted to understand your journey a bit more, and
Oh,
I had this conversation, and I said because there weren't very many women obviously, standing on big stages, and I asked you why that was or why are women, so competitive with each other, and we had a really long exchange, and you said something, and I've said it many times, you said, "Gosh, when there's only one seat at the table, what are our options?"
mm,
And I wanna change that.
yeah.
And I don't know if you remember that, but that
I d
was
I actually tried before this, event to talk today to think about when we met first, and I couldn't nail it down.
yeah,
It's like I feel like I've known you forever, and, we've been around each other, we've been on the same podium together, things like that, that I couldn't remember, so thank you for reminding me.
yeah, well, I got off that bus and I thought, I can help. I feel that way too. How can we not be so competitive and, open the doors for other women? So that's your
Absolutely.
legacy, sister. Like, when I think about the
Yeah.
legacy you left at that MGMA and,
Mhm.
a lot of things that are happening, and you are super politically active, and we can talk about it. We can talk about whatever you wanna talk about, but I'm following you on Facebook. I'm like, I look at her kinda jumping in there, but you do it so tastefully. You're
Oh,
right, like, but I know where you stand on the issues for
yeah.
sure, and I'm grateful for that you're using your voice.
Trying to do that, and today it's required of all of us, regardless of where you sit. I think that I actually was talking to a new neighbor of mine last night, um, and she talked about a book, and she recommended it at this moment. It's not in my head. I'll think about it in a second. It's something like, um, "I never knew that before," or "I
Mm,
never heard," or so, "I never talked and never heard something." But the point was that she's trying very hard to not shut down conversations with people that disagree with her, but instead to engage them and to ask them to talk about why they feel that way or why they believe that way. And she takes the opportunity to talk about why she believes that way. And I was very inspired. And we just had that conversation literally last night, over hamburgers. Um, and I'm going to find that book and I'm going to think more about that. I don't naturally come to conversation I'm not naturally comfortable around conversations that have potential conflict in them. I was raised in a certain way. My family dynamic impacts me a lot when I think about what shifts or what I learn. It took me a while to be an adult before I kind of became Sarah. You know?
well said.
Yeah.
Agreed. I'm still working on it. I do think conflict is hard, and I struggle too. So I have a bit of a platform on social media, and I don't, I'm in this unique position where I'm trying to be careful, but yet not a chicken.
Yeah.
And I have
Yeah.
very strong feelings, and yet I want to influence, but I'm not doing that. I'm not taking the time that your neighbor is taking to sit down and dig into
Yes,
it. I'm
exactly.
listening, but I'm not trying to influence enough, I think, by how I land in the decisions that I land in. So maybe we
It does take time.
it
And
is
that's the thing. You have to really slow down
yeah.
to talk about something with somebody who feels, you know, very differently and has very strong beliefs. These conversations never end up with two people who really don't care.
Right.
They end up with people who are very vested I think it's important, but it does take time.
It does send people further down the rabbit hole, I think, in their own belief when those
Correct.
conversations aren't done well, right? When
Oh,
you
yes.
yeah. And I feel like that's what's happened is in order to be right, we've had to defend ourselves to the point where I'll say all of us, that it further entrenches you in that instead
Uh,
of,
yeah.
what we know is somewhere in the middle, use
Well,
your
I
own
mean, recent events would suggest that being entrenched in our beliefs is critical,
ooh,
because we're going backwards in
interesting.
many ways, from my perspective.
Say more. Tell me more about that.
Well, I just think that when I think that it's 2022 and I'm worrying about basic rights for women that most of our lives we've had access to, whether it's a healthcare decision or even other things that seem to me a little bit too much on the edge of threat
Mm,
than I thought 6 months ago. And when I think that, in 2020, I was worrying about getting more women to be a board chair. Now, I mean, there are things that people say that you hear on the news that are just outlandish. I mean, things that, taking away rights of women to vote was said on the TV this week. And I was like, okay, wait a minute. Let's not go there. Let's not even talk about that. That's not even possible to me. And so I think I think many of us fought for certain things during our lives to happen a certain way and to make the world more open to everybody and for people to have choices about all kinds of issues. And to think that those rights are being limited and or at threat, um, is hard actually to wrap my mind around,
yeah,
even though I understand it. It's hard.
yeah. Well, I wanna clean up something and say, not believe more in the middle, but act more from the middle. So I
Oh, I
wanna
like that.
right, I
Mhm.
like that's where I'm with you, and
Mhm.
yet, I we do a lot of DEI work in our
Of
company,
course.
and
Mhm.
there's one of the lines that we say, "Be relatable before you're fanatical." So in the back of my
I love
mind
that. Yeah.
but it's hard to do, and I think I'm stuck in the relatable. I need to move to
Well
fanatical in some ways, in some
well,
conversations.
no. Well, I totally agree with what you just said. I mean, I always start from relatable because that's kind of where I start. I mean, that's just who I am. But my personal beliefs are stronger than how I sometimes relate to other people.
Gotcha.
Right now, I think the question is, I think I'm just not sure where I am on the continuum because so much is changing around me. I mean, I know what I believe in, but as far as how I converse about it, I think I'm still figuring that out
Yeah.
based on what's happened this year.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. And that people are not being thoughtful about that and how
Yeah.
do I feel? And that's the piece that's been surprising to me that people will repeat sound bites and
Yes.
as if those are well,
Yeah. Yeah.
like they're the truth. Okay, right. You and I are going to solve that. One of the things I
Okay.
usually ask people, and I'm going to ask you now, halfway into the show,
Yes.
is where are you sitting right now? Because you are, well, you said retired, which does not mean you're not incredibly busy, but tell me where
No.
you're sitting right now.
Well, so right now I'm in my office because even though I'm retired, I still do projects. I'm in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, which is a really large resort town it's a resort, but it's a year-round town on the Atlantic coast. And in my office, I have lots of books and lots of things on the walls that, whether it's picture of family and friends or dogs or the pictures of our travel uh, or photos with the travel probably is a lot of it, and it just feel like it's a place I can go, and it feels like my space. So in
I
the house, this is my space.
One of the things you did as I was stalking you, or I'm sorry, watching you, was you bought a house. You like moved to the Virgin Islands. That's
We
some,
did.
yeah. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so it for a number of reasons that involved our family, at the time, we decided that we wanted to, um move to a beach environment, and we had vacationed in St. Croix before. We at first were fascinated with St. Martin, but it's very difficult for US citizens to buy a place in St. Martin. So St. Croix became a place that we really loved. And my husband and I looked at each other one day and said, maybe we should just move to St. Croix. I know it really was kind of that bizarre. Okay. And my husband opposed it first. And the first feeling, of course, was I don't know what he's thinking. And then the second thing that came into my brain was, I don't know. Maybe we should talk about it. I mean, it was just like that, Tracy. And I think we and the rest of our family needed some more happiness in our lives. And I think we saw it as we could have a place that our family could come, we could all be together, we would all be happy. And it turned into kind of an important thing to do. And it was a shift in my career, obviously, as I walked away from doing one of those positions that you talked about to being on my own. So I ended up, I had been doing some writing, and as you mentioned, I'd been doing some speaking. And so I planned to continue to do that. And then I was hoping to find some other gigs, whether it was consulting or doing more writing or something to kind of fill the income gap. And it was very risky compared to what I would usually agree to do, but somehow we were able to listen to that idea, and we decided to do it.
Oh
And
my,
it was wonderful. And many things happened out of that. In fact, my career at Deloitte Consulting came out of having been in St. Croix. I mean, that's bizarre, right?
yes. How does that happen?
Well, here is one of my things I pass on to people is, so, I grew up in the Midwest. I'm a believer of if you work hard, you become successful. All right. But I learned along the way that having a big network helps you to be successful too.
Mm,
And that I had to learn I can't do everything myself. I need help and I need mentors and I need people I can call when I have a dilemma I'm not sure which way to go on. And that network, I activated my network when I moved to St. Croix is basically what I did. Called and sent emails to people that I had worked with and knew around the country and basically just said, I'm moving to St. Croix. And after the what? Okay. Um, and if you need help with anything, I can work remotely. I can help you do projects. If you have any consulting, I'd love to do that. And That was all I did. Okay. So I was there for about a year, with not with doing what I thought I would be doing, and I wasn't hearing from people yet. But at the year point, I get a call from someone I met at an MGMA meeting in revenue cycle, who now was a director at Deloitte Consulting. And she's like, "Okay, Sarah, we just sold all this work about physician groups, and I don't have a big enough team. And could you help me?" And I go, "Well, what does that mean?" She goes, "I don't really know. We'll figure it out."
Wow.
And we did. And so I did that project for her. And let's just say it went really well. And then another person at Deloitte called me, anyways. But after the fourth project, the original person that called me called and said, "Okay, so we want to know if you want to be full time because it's getting too expensive to have you be a contractor." True story.
Yeah.
Story. And after we figured out if I could live in the Virgin Islands and work for Deloitte in the United States, because you may know that Deloitte's a worldwide company, and so they have companies within companies, and even though the United States is their headquarters, and the U.S. Virgin Islands is a territory of the United States, there we had to get all the legal stuff squared away, but it worked. And then when we moved back to the States 3 years later, um, I was still with Deloitte, and I just was in the States again. So
So listen, of all the people I know, you end up, like, almost last on the list of someone's like, "I think I'll move to the Virgin Islands."
I know, I know, I know.
That
It
was
is
a
completely. I mean, there was a lot of things going on that fed towards it, and it was such a unique point
well,
in our lives that it worked.
you said something incredible, though. You said we were able to listen, right? Like,
Exactly.
and I think,
Exactly.
ooh, that's a shift, right? A shift from
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I mean, there could have been days because you know how me, I love to work hard and be at it a lot, where I could have been too busy and not really heard my husband when he was talking about it, and it was atypical for him too. He was at a point he had his own business, and he was moving from being the founder and running the business to being, a stockholder, but turning it over to a new CEO. So that was an pivotal moment for him, but there were other things going on, and, yeah, I mean, it is still today the thing that's hardest for me to explain, but it was just like we were present in the moment, and there were a lot more good reasons to do it than not.
mm. I love that. There's so many people that get on this podcast and say something like that, that there was, whether it was a whisper or a
Yeah.
download, Trisha Britt calls it that, just a knowing. And I
Mhm.
do hope that, some of these conversations will kind of plant, the little seed, like, why not? You said it. Why not? Why wouldn't
Right?
we do that? Because you
Well,
got,
why not at least think about it? I think that was all you have to do is just let yourself be open to an idea,
yeah.
and, I'm big on pros and cons when I make big decisions, so I didn't pull out a piece of paper, but they were listing in my head.
Yeah. So you come back to Rehoboth. Is that, you didn't actually come back? You went to back to DC. Is that right?
We went back to Northern Virginia. So
Okay.
the reason why we left St. Croix, a short story that could take the entire podcast, we won't go there, was unfortunately my husband had a very serious car accident on the island. And as would happen to those of you considering going to an island, we knew this, that the healthcare system would be fine for normal kinds of things, but if something big happens, it might not support it. And so basically, we got him on a plane back and to Inova, where I had hired the trauma doctors. And in the meantime, I'd gotten his x-rays and everything else. And I said, if I can get him there, can you guys take care of him? And we'll be waiting.
Of
We'll be waiting
course.
at the door. So they put Humpty Dumpty back together again because that's what it was like. He had a lot of orthopedic injuries. And then he, from a healthcare, we really needed to stay in the States.
Do you still have the house in St. Croix?
No, we do not. We had it as a vacation rental for a while, but then we decided to sell it. It was like that time had passed. I mean, we still vacation there, but having a home for us is a lot to have 2 homes. That's not really how we live. and the maintenance and all that stuff, just to be practical, just wasn't a fit for us. For some people, it is.
I realize I quickly asked about the house instead of your husband. How's Richard? He's
Oh
good.
no, he's fine.
Oh, do you have the house? Oh, and how's your husband?
I said they put him back together again.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's right.
long recovery. But all good.
Good, good. All right.
Thank you for asking.
Oh my gosh, of course. Listen, something that is also I did not expect is
Mhm.
that you are now teaching a class. This is one of your
Yes,
shifts too. Tell
yes.
the audience about what you're into right now, because I love it.
I know. Well, so during COVID, we got involved with, and this is available in every state, I believe, but there's something called Osher Lifelong Learning that affiliates with universities. So University of Delaware affiliated, and it's for continuing education for anybody over 50 years old.
Never
No credits, and hardly costs it costs a little bit to join and do your class, whatever, but other than that, it's just really peer-to-peer education, sharing, and during COVID via Zoom, I took a bunch of classes that I loved, whether it was the golden era of Broadway or World War II Pacific naval from the naval perspective, because my dad was in World War II. And, some broad topics of knowledge, and so I enjoyed it. And a couple months ago, they asked if anybody would be interested in being a new instructor. All right. And it wasn't that prompted it. What happened really was a couple months ago, I went on vacation with 7 other women. There's about 10 of us that vacation long weekends over the last 10 years. And 7 of us were able to go. This was our first time to get together after Vegas. And in the getting caught up with everybody, they were asking me about, "Well, Sarah, you're newly on the board of your local hospital system. Tell us about how that happened." And I had just gotten certified with my dog to be a dog therapy team. I was off doing stuff, being retired. And they wanted to hear about it, and I told them about it. And um, one of the one of the women just stopped me for a minute and said, "Okay, wait. So how did you figure out you wanted to do this? And how do I figure it out?" I mean, she was comfortable enough to say, "I'm not really sure what brings me joy and makes me happy. I am not sure. How did you figure that out?" And it was a moment. It was a shift. Okay, because I stopped because individually, it was kind of like, let me think about how I did that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it was kind of innate in me because I've been always learning and seeking. I'm the person that will do the quiz on 10 new ways to do whatever, and take a class about whatever. So I guess always into that. And so that came easier for me. But she asked about it. It stopped me. And I was like, wow, are there women don't know what they wanna do when they retire? I mean, it was just kind of a question back in my head, but didn't think anything more of it at that moment until I get this email from Ollie saying, "Does anybody wanna be a new instructor?" And I was like, "Oh, I think I wanna be an instructor about what brings you joy." Wow. Okay. And again, it's the stop for a moment. Do I wanna do this? And of course, when I was like 10, I thought I wanted to be a teacher. Which really goes back to the you and I being on the stage, right? We like to teach and help others do well and succeed and try to, pass on our expertise so other people have it easier doing what they're trying to do and stuff like that. And so that's a natural thing for me. Anyway, so I submitted it. I decided I wanted to do what brings you joy, women only. And it
Okay.
was really interesting because I had this moment about, I wonder if that's going to be weird. Like, do they have just women only or men only classes? I wasn't sure that was a thing, right?
Yeah.
And it was fine. And I had my first class yesterday.
What? Tell me. Tell me more. Tell me more.
So it went well. It is a hybrid class. So there are people in the classroom and people on Zoom, which is a new expertise for me to get comfortable with. Um, and I got good feedback. So I think first class went well, but we have 4 more. So it's just 5 weeks. I feel like I'm kind of practicing the class and then get feedback. That's kind of something that I do. In fact, make a comment on one of your recent podcast or one of the podcasts I listened to recently, um, Meg Morgan, is that right?
Yes. Yes.
You guys talked about, or she talked about for a minute, that there are times when women act small or,
Mm.
not as big as they could act, or she talked about being, having humility, but sometimes you can take it too far, I think she said. And I thought about that because for the class, my husband decided to also teach. He's teaching about climate change. And so he submits his thing, we get accepted, and he's running around telling people about his class. I'm going to do this class. I'm so excited. Maybe you want to take it. And I'm like, quiet. Like he wants to tell everybody else about my class. Okay. And I'm like, quiet. And so when she said that on the podcast, I was like, hmm, am I not playing big enough? Am I playing small? What does that mean? And I decided that there's a piece of me that has probably a little too much perfectionism in me. Okay. And that I like to do some things kind of behind the scenes before I kind of get comfortable with it. And then, of course, I'd be happy to tell everybody about it. And now you have me telling me about it before it's perfect. Okay. But but the point is that it was your podcast made me reflect on what I was doing and thinking. And I didn't feel I don't think at all that I was playing small. I think I was deciding when to play big.
Mm. Ooh,
So,
that's a great piece of discernment because
it just
you're pulling the lever in your own time. It's not that you're not
correct.
pulling it. I got you.
Right,
Interesting.
and yeah, but I do think in general that, men and women have a difference in this. I think that men are quicker to just tell people about whatever they're doing,
Yep.
and women decide when I think not a stereotype, but just in general that and I'll just speak for myself, that I think I pick the times to talk about things and that I don't need to be the center of attention all the time, and etcetera, and that's been comfortable for me. I've never felt that doing that I missed an opportunity. It felt okay for me.
Yeah. Listen, the you've interviewed I wanna ask you about I'm gonna come back to joy, but I wanna ask you this quick question. You've interviewed thousands of men and women, I know, in your career, very big jobs and, lots of, team building. What do you think is the biggest difference? I'll answer it if you need a moment from my perspective, but what do you think is the biggest difference in that person that walks into the interview, the male versus the female person? What do you think?
It is a complex question, which means it's a complex answer, but I'll just give you a couple perspectives. I do think the thing I just mentioned about, do women come in and tell their story, or do they kind of wait for you to ask them their story, and then it kind of comes out? Men are kind of prepared to give their story, and that's not everybody.
Yeah.
Um, I think um, I think there is still more work for women to do to be more confident in themselves when they interview. I think an interview and um, is that moment where people are judging themselves, and I think women are harder on themselves. So I think it shows up in the interview
Yeah.
that they're less um, not boastful. I don't use that word inappropriately, but they don't always give you all their great things that they've done
Yeah.
unless you've go for it a little bit. And clearly we don't have enough experience doing things like negotiating salary. We just haven't. It's still we're behind on that.
Yeah.
And it is not an even playing field. Um, I'm gonna send you something, because when you started asking me this, I thought about it. There's it's too long to use right now, but, there is a quote that I have from someone that talks about how women have unique challenges, but also unique perspectives, and it debates the story of, um, do women wanna be equal to men? Okay, but if they're equal to men, are they really making a difference? That
Mm.
women have their own voice and their own contributions and stuff. It's a fascinating thing, and I actually, shared it in my first class to kinda give them a sense of where I was coming from about why I wanted it to be women only. And it's just empowering, It's, and it just states the obvious that, you know, women and men coming together are the best of all things. We all bring different skill sets because how we often were raised. I mean, I'm 66, so I was raised a long time ago. So things were, different. I was playing with dolls, boys with playing with trucks, and there was no even thought about sharing that. And it's just a different world. But it shows up when you're an adult about those things.
Well, this will tell you something about me. I had the Barbie, airplane
Oh my
and
gosh,
camper set, and I had my Matchbox car set up to go through all of that,
that
so
is awesome. I know. And but you're younger than me, so you had a
uh,
little bit more of an open
yeah,
world, but yes, you're
that's
younger than I am.
that's
But,
funny.
yeah, so I think that today, when you think about, um, work environments, or I see it in retirement. Here's an interesting thing, Tracy, we've never talked about, or I've never even thought about sharing it with someone, but so I live in a 55 plus community, but in the community where we live, the age is probably averaging more like 70. Okay, so we have all ages, above and below that, and I see this microcosm of different gender roles in
Mm,
my community. Because when you think about, like, generations, so we have people that are in the silent generation, obviously, we have a lot of boomers, and then we have some people that are, 10 years younger than I am, different generation, and it's interesting to watch, um the genders, and then our community is very diverse, in all kinds of ways that you would want it to be diverse. So it also, you see a lot of things maybe that you haven't experienced, which are, for us, amazing. We like that.
yeah, listen, I asked you about that, interviewing and men and women when you mentioned Meg, because Meg, tells some
Yes.
great stories, and in her book, Everything is Negotiable, shout out to her, she talks a lot about that, but so that's why I took you down that path, but I
Yeah.
think
I have to think
collectively.
about that some more, but
Yeah.
go ahead.
Well, collectively,
Yeah.
every time I have interviewed anyone, the men come in usually with, they know 40% of the job, and they're talking the entire time about the 40% they know. Women will come, right? As they
Yep,
should.
yep.
Women will come in knowing 90% of the job, and they'll talk about the 10% they're just not sure. Help me,
Correct.
convince me that I can actually do this before I
Yes.
take this job. So that's I can remember.
Classic. Yeah.
It is, and there's a lot of people, I do women in leadership, stuff for signature leaders, and the first time I was asked to do that, I said, "Oh my gosh, why are you making me do women? I mean, it's the same, it's." And then I went to my first one and I was like, "Oh gosh, it's not a there are a few things, the orientation, how we show up and
Mhm.
how we exert our power is very, very
Mm.
different."
Or
I
or
love
don't exert our power. Yeah.
Well said, well said, well
Mhm.
said. Now listen, there's no segue back to joy, but I gotta know, what'd you do in your first class yesterday? Tell everybody what does what does a class on joy look like on day 1?
Well, so on day one, the focus of the first class was really about getting the students to focus on themselves,
Mm,
because the class is very much each person's having their own workshop, because the focus is, as I said, you. So, like, when I told them, I said, think about the name of the class. What brings you joy is the name of the class. Cross out you and put your name, and that's the name of your class.
I
Okay.
love
So,
that. That's
what,
good. That's
yeah.
good.
That's right. What brings Tracy joy is their class. And then pulling from a number of resources that I've used over the years and then more recent reading, I had them do activities. I had them do things like, um, ready, set, I'm going to tell you to do something, and I want you just to write as much as you can for 10 minutes. I'm going to not talk, which of course made everybody very nervous. And I said, and just start writing. What do you love to do? Okay, and there were people that write, they just kept writing, and there were other people that wrote one thing and went, "Hmm, hmm, I don't know." Okay, so we did some of that. We talked through, going back, into childhood memories and thinking about what brought you joy as a child. What what did you do that was silly and ridiculous when you think about it now, but you loved it? Write it down. And I have them, they have a joy journal. They have paper and pencil, or they can do it electronically if they're on Zoom, and they're capturing all these thoughts. So the idea is from the exercises that we already did, and I even gave them a little homework, just a little, so they keep working on it, that when they come to the next class, they're gonna in their head, they can look at what they wrote and come back and say, "Okay, where am I?" Because women, unfortunately, too many of them, I'll just say it that way, don't spend time on themselves. And so I told them, I said, we're gonna spend this hour, 15 minutes for, 5 times over the next 5 weeks, and this is just for you. So you have to set when you come in here, you gotta set down I have errands to do, my chores to do, my family, my job. Some people are still working in the class, job, et cetera, and we're just gonna focus on you. And so I'm very conscious that it takes a minute, more than a minute, to get yourself in that way of thinking. And as the class continued, they were able to go into thinking more. And then they've got that captured. But so the first 2 classes are really around getting them connected to what brings them joy, all kinds of different activities and things like that. And then the third class is around who is your personal network, and make sure they have one, it's activated, they know who it is. Because in the 4th and 5th classes, we're gonna talk about, what you and I would call a personal board of directors and who can help me with my dreams, and what's their action plan. And I told them, I said, "Not in a business action plan, formal kind of way. We're gonna have a way where you can say, 'What do I wanna do in 3 months, 6 months, a year, different about joy?'" And one of their homework assignments was on the list of things that they say that they love to do, we got to the point where we discussed there are probably things on the list you haven't done for a while,
Mm,
right?
yep.
So one of their homework assignments is to pick one thing, only one, and do it this week.
What were some of the things you think will get chosen? Did you get to hear any of their lists
Well,
or
at this point, I'm letting them keep their own stuff
okay,
to themselves.
okay.
A few people shared things. Somebody said, "I used to bicycle on a regular basis. And now my bike has dust on it, and you
Yeah.
know, probably time to go do that since we have beautiful parks and the beach right here. This is ridiculous." And some people talked about family that are far away, and keeping in touch with them that they want to do that more.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm
So,
glad.
but I'm sure it's a long list. And um, what what I know about women, and that was one of the reasons why I wanted to have a women only class, is that we often want to have our privacy, and get ready, and we'll be ready to share when we're ready to share. So, if somebody, I told him, I said, if you never share during the class, it's okay. That was a success for you. That's great. I said, but if you want to share because you have something you want to share, that's great. And I'll share one of my things that seem to have made a point. So I'll share it here. So in my office here, I have 2 pictures that I painted. And before you get all excited about that I'm an artist, I'm not. It is adult paint by number.
Okay.
Okay. Now, it's a silly thing, right? So I got a gift from somebody, I got a gift from somebody, paint by number during COVID. Here's something you could do. And I had a blast. I mean, giggling, ridiculously giggling doing my painting and not sure it was gonna be good at all, but better than I thought. And it was a picture of Venice, and that was our last trip before COVID. So I had this picture, the gondolas, the whole thing. And then during COVID, my husband I'll take this back to joy in just a second. My husband, figured out that he could send a picture of our dog, who is one of the important part of our lives. You could send that into a company, and they will send you a custom paint by number.
No kidding.
Yes, I painted a picture of my dog. It actually looks like him. It's actually his face and head, so the whole body. I painted that, of course, very special to me. So what was interesting though, when I personally, before the class, was going through the exercises myself, because there's 2 exercises in the class that I had done before years ago, but some of them are new. And I thought, well, let me go through this one. And I was going back through the what are childhood memories. Totally had not even recognized this, Tracy. In kindergarten, both my parents were working. I, after school, would go to my neighbor's house. Okay. And she would take care of me. in the afternoon. She, um, came one day I got there, and the table is all set up, and we're gonna do paint by number
What?
as a kindergartner. So, first of all, I'm at someone else's house, and she has paint open. That was trust.
Yeah.
Trust, right? Paint everywhere,
That's right.
right? Paint
That's
could be
right.
everywhere. Okay. We have paint open. I didn't know anything about this paint by number thing. And just because it's hysterical, because we were just talking about men and women, it was women ballerinas. Okay. But that's okay. That's okay. And I painted and she taught me how to do it. And I thought, I mean, this was only like, this big, little tiny
Sure.
thing. I thought I was actually an artist.
Yeah.
I, like, ran home, I'm so excited, we put it in a little frame from the dime store and put it on the wall, the whole thing, and I had forgotten about that,
Wow.
and I'm sure that it was a connection to why I was having so much fun now,
Of course.
and so I told that story, and you could see people after I told it, they're like, "Oh, yeah," and they started writing some more about things.
Nice.
So I
Oh my
share that with
gosh.
you and your listeners.
Thank you. Listen, I think it's interesting because you said something that's super important. We don't take the time to inventory and pay attention and infuse joyful things in our life
Yeah,
because we're
yeah,
busy, because we're taking care of everyone else, because we have no
correct.
time. And I have on my wall, and Wally sent it to me. Whatever you're not changing, you're choosing. And
Yes.
when he sent that to me, it made me mad because I thought, "Why is he saying that to me?" But
Yeah,
he was trying to help me, but what I
yeah,
heard him say is, "You're the
yeah,
only reason you're working so hard." But now I'm like, to choose joy and to
yes.
choose to inventory and to choose those moments. Do you think the pandemic made us more aware of that? What do you think? Do you think it played a role? Do you think people are more open to it now, or do you think it played no difference at all?
I well, there was a lot of loneliness and depression.
Mhm.
So not everybody had an outlet or a support system to allow them to be joyful, I think.
Yeah,
Because it was there was so much about staying home that I think a lot of people just froze in place,
yeah,
and, the so I think it's harder for people right now. I think people are still coming out of the well, at least let me say, people 50 and over. I can't speak I mean, our kids seem to be our kids or adult kids are seeming to bounce back. By the way, I have 2 kids and 7 grandkids, and
What?
now 2 great grandkids.
Do not.
I do, and 1 on the way. So, without taking everybody through the family history, I married in about 30 years ago, but my husband was an early father, early married, early fathered. And so, his kids are his kids now, our kids, are, adults and, I had grandkids before I should have, right? Because I didn't I married in. So it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. It is terribly, terribly bizarre to have great grandkids, okay? Because
Yeah,
actually what happens is people so if I'm out with my grandkids, I mean, I have a early 30s granddaughter, okay? And so people think that could be my kid,
sure, for
but
sure.
that's my granddaughter, right? And then, one of her 2 of her cousins now have babies, so it's very confusing, but we just all get together and don't worry about it. Um, but the the opportunity to see the impact of COVID and all of that experience on them is heartbreaking in some cases because
Yeah,
of how much it's changed their early lives.
yeah,
But for other people, I think some people took the opportunity to try some new things, but I don't think it was the majority. I think people are
right.
just I feel like right now, like the sun is out, our doors are open, let's go do some new stuff. Let's be with people and hang out or go do something together, whatever. I see that more.
Yeah, good. I think so
But
too. I'm less afraid of it than I
mhm.
was. I had a bad scare very early on in
Of
COVID, so
course you did.
I've been
Yeah.
super, like nervous about it. And now, people liken it to a bad cold. But I've had 2
Oh, no.
vaccines and 2 boosters and all that, and I'm still
Yeah.
hearing people that are getting still really sick.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm never gonna say I liken it to a bad cold. Like you, I get all the shots available as soon as possible. Um, and, I have yet to have a positive test, and I'm hoping to keep that for a long time,
Let's keep that.
because everybody has a different experience, and, um, I'm just so glad that we have you back, and you're better,
Thank you.
and, it's a journey.
Yeah, for sure. Now, last thing before we go, I know you have to have some big trips coming up. Tell me,
Oh,
are you doing any traveling?
we are. So, yes, we're kinda doing the COVID catch up, I call it, for
Okay.
travel.
Wow.
Yeah. So, in May, we jumped forward and did a week in France.
Nice.
Richard's fluent in French, so, traveling in France for us is a delight. It's a delight.
Nice.
You can go anywhere and do anything. I just smile and try not to talk. Yeah, but
Me
he is
too. And I eat a lot of French fries because that's for
oh,
some reason the only thing they think I want. So it's
oh,
super like
okay.
it's weird.
Oh, that's so weird. Yeah, so we love France and, went back to Claude Monet's home in Giverny outside of France, which if you've never been, I recommend everybody do it.
Nice.
You feel like you're in his paintings.
Wow.
It's where he painted, the gardens and the lily pads and all of those kinds of things. You just stand there and go, "This would be where he painted that." It was
Yeah.
so cool.
He was sitting
Um,
right here when yeah,
right
he
here.
yeah.
Like, right
Wow.
here. Got the easel up, I could see the painting. It was so surreal.
You could
So,
do it
it
now.
really
You're
pardon me?
you're an experienced painter. You could do that now.
Oh, yeah, with a paint by number, which maybe I should do that. I could get a paint by number of a Claude Monet painting.
There you
Oh,
go.
there's the goal.
There you go.
Um, I'll let you know if I do it. But, the big trip, like the big bucket list trip is coming up in October. We're going on an African safari.
That is
So,
so awesome. Good for
yeah.
you.
Very, very big. I love animals, though I'm just gonna be honest, I do have a really healthy, sense of not putting myself at risk, and so I'm very aware that these lovely animals that I wanna see, are wild, and so I'll just follow the protocol they tell me to follow, so all
So
will be well.
two of our best friends, Kevin and Rita Gasaway, just got back from a safari, and
Oh,
it's their second one. And I
oh, man.
remember after their first one of the things they learned early on is that somebody ahead of them is feeding all of those animals. So,
Oh, good to know.
yeah, yeah. So I just give you that little tip. The reason they're around is because they've just eaten, and so
Something.
yeah. So you'll be.
Yes.
But promise me when you get back, you'll give me a report in, and I want to hear how the rest of this joy class
Oh,
goes.
yeah, I'm really I mean, well, here's the shocker about the, what brings you joy class. I had no idea if 2 people or 5 people or maybe 10 people might sign up because it was really off the normal kind of path. Are you ready?
Yeah.
42.
What?
42 people signed up for this class. I'm like, "What does that mean?" Okay, I think this is a good thing. Okay. Now, and most of them are on Zoom, so, like, 10 are in the class and the rest are on Zoom. But it was like, I was so excited that I felt like this is an important topic. People
Yeah.
wanna do it.
Yep.
And so I will definitely keep you informed, and as I think about things, my life very much is about, um, things just happen to me. I've been very lucky. Been I feel like I've always been well prepared and stuff like that, but I feel like things just happen if you, I used to consider myself a control freak, and I've spent a lot of time learning how to let go. Okay, and to let things happen. And, it has been a much better life and world since I started learning that. And I used to consider, the song "I Will Survive,"
Yeah.
Gloria Gaynor, I w
Sure.
the big anthem song, which I still love, but I think now I've moved to, "Let It Go" from Frozen.
Oh, okay.
Let it go, let it go. It's like joyful, all and there's all that messaging in there about, you work hard, you're a good girl, and all these other things, and then you just realize, I'm not gonna worry about what anybody else thinks. I think retirement is very freeing.
It sounds like a woman with 7 grandchildren, and listen, I love that you're using the word freeing, and I know you're, in retirement, but you're definitely still leaving your mark on the world, and,
Thank you.
as I started this, just a giant thank you for, bringing me into your circle and,
Oh.
Really, I'm super grateful that we're friends, and I
I look
appreciate
forward
you.
to it and look forward to more time with you in the future.
Deal. All
Thank
right,
you so
friend.
much. I really, really, you surprised me by the invitation to be here, and it's such an honor, and it's given me joy. How's that?
I
It
love that.
has.
You better talk
Yeah,
about that your next class.
I
All right, friend.
will.
We'll do it again soon. Good luck on the safari.
Bye.